Okay, welcome back to another video. This one is about GED RLA reading. In the last couple of videos, I've taken you through some questions related to a fiction passage. Then we did a double passage, a non-fiction one. And this one, we're going to go back to the fiction again, because lots of students ask for help with the fiction, even although it's only about 20% or so of the text provided. About 80% or so are informational text, but the fiction can be quite tricky. So let's have a look. This is an excerpt from The Pendulum by O. Henry. Again, there really is no getting around having to read this. The questions you'll be asked really do require an understanding of the passage as a whole, as you will see. So question 18, a pendulum is something that swings back and forth. Why do you think O. Henry named this story The Pendulum? Okay, so we really have to have a quick look at the passage. Let's make our way through it. Okay, here we go. So John walked slowly towards his flat. Slowly because in the lexicon of his daily life there was no such word as perhaps. There are no surprises awaiting a man who's been married 2 years and lives in a flat. As he walked, John Perkins prophesied to himself with gloomy and downtrodden cynicism the foregone conclusions of the monotonous day. Katie would meet him at the door. He would remove his coat, sit upon a lounge and read the evening paper. For dinner there would be pot roast, a salad flavoured with a dressing, warranted not to crack or injure the leather, stewed rhubarb, and the bottle of strawberry marmalade blushing at the certificate of chemical purity on its label. After dinner, Katie would show him the new patch in her crazy quilt that the Iceman had cut for her off at the end of his four-in hand. At 7:30, they would spread newspapers over the furniture to catch the pieces of plastering that fell when the fat man in the flat overhead began to take his physical exercises. John Perkins knew these things would happen. And he knew that at 8:15 he would summon his nerve, reach for his hat, and that his wife would deliver this speech in a querulous tone. Now, where are you going? I'd like to know, Mr. Where are you going? I'd like to know. John Perkins. Thought I'd drop up to McCluskey's, he would answer. Play a game or two of pool with the fellows. Of late, such had been John Perkins' habit. At 10 or 11 he would return. Sometimes Katie would be asleep, sometimes waiting up. Okay, so just have a quick capsule review of what we've read. We have our main character, John Perkins, who we are first introduced to him walking, trudging back to his flat where his wife of 2 years was waiting for him, and his life is described as monotonous. It's like John Perkins is struggling to adapt, I think, to married life, and we can see this as he slinks off in the evening to play pool with his friends like a teenager. This isn't really the behaviour of a man who's a good family man, let's say. He seems to be struggling to let go of those little elements from his youth, like hanging out with the boys every evening. So let's see where this goes. Tonight, John Perkins encountered a tremendous upheaval of the commonplace when he reached his door. No Katie was there with her affectionate, confectionate kiss. The 3 rooms seemed in portentous disorder. All about lay her things in confusion. Shoes in the middle of the floor, curling tongs, hair bows, kimonos, powder box, jumbled together on the dresser and chairs. This was not Katie's way. With a sinking heart, John saw the comb, with a curling cloud of her brown hair among its teeth. Some unusual hurry and perturbation must have possessed her, for she always carefully placed these combings in the little blue vase on the mantel, to be some day formed into the coveted feminine rat. Hanging conspicuously to the gas jet by a string was folded paper. John seized it. It was a note from his wife, running thus. Dear John, I just had a telegram saying my mother is very sick. I'm going to take the 4:30 train. Brother Sam is going to meet me at the depot there. There's cold mutton in the icebox. I will write tomorrow. Hastily, Katie. Never during their 2 years of being married had he and Katie been separated for a night. John read the note over and over in a dazed way. Here was a change in their routine that had never before varied, and it left him feeling strange. There on the back of a chair hung, pathetically empty and formless, the red apron with black dots that she always wore while getting ready the meals. Her weekday clothes had been tossed here and there in her haste. A little paper bag of her favourite butterscotch candy lay on the table untouched. A daily newspaper was on the floor, a large rectangular hole, gaping, where the railroad timetable had been clipped from it. Everything in the room spoke of a loss, of an essence gone, of its soul and life departed. John Perkins stood among the dead remains with a queer feeling of desolation in his heart. So this is interesting. This guy, John Perkins, he was kind of taking for granted his marriage and his relationship and the cozy routine, I suppose, that made up his life. And now there's been something has drastically changed. His wife has had to leave urgently, and suddenly his heart is kind of crying out for the life that he previously had. So this is kind of like an awakening for John Perkins. He's probably a kind of a jolt of reality that he needs, that his life is actually pretty good with this woman and that he shouldn't take her for granted. So he had desolation in his heart. He's deeply affected by this. Let's see what happens. He began to tidy the room as best he could. When he picked up her apron, he had the strangest feeling of terror. He had never thought of life without Katie before. She had become so thoroughly a part of his life that she was like the air he breathed, necessary but scarcely noticed. Now, without warning, she was gone, vanished, as though she'd never existed. Of course, it would only be for a few days, or at most a week or two, but it seemed as though the hand of death had pointed a finger at his secure and uneventful home. John Perkins was not used to thinking about his emotions, but he knew now that Katie was necessary to his happiness. It is terrible the way I've been treating her. Off every night with the guys to play pool instead of staying here with her. John Perkins, you're the worst of the bunch. I'm going to make it up to her. Okay, so John has had an epiphany. He's had a sudden and important realization about his life. He's realized that his wife means a lot to him and he can't live without her. So, let's see where we go from here. Suddenly the door opened and Katie walked in carrying her bag. I'm glad that he's back, said Katie. Mum wasn't that sick. She just had a bit of a stomach upset. So I took the next train back. John Perkins felt something shift. It was almost like a machine clicking into position, swinging back to where it should be. He looked at the clock. It was 8:15, the time he left each night to hang out with the guys. He reached for his hat automatically. Where are you going? Asked Katie. I thought I'd drop up to McCluskey's and play a game or two of pool with the fellows, he told her. Okay, so that is it. So, the worm turned Mr. Perkins. He returned to his old routine again when given the slightest opportunity there. Even after his epiphany, his moment of sudden realization of how important his wife was to him, when he saw her again and that the routine could be, their past routine could be continued, he just clicked like a machine back into the old routine. It's quite sad, isn't it? I don't know what's going to happen to their relationship in the future, but there you go. I feel sorry for Katie for sure. Let's look at the questions. 18. A pendulum is something that swings back and forth. Why do you think O. Henry named his story The Pendulum? A. Liked to play pool with his friends in the evening? Definitely not. B. Changed his feelings from 1 minute to the next? Probably. C. Started to help clean up the house but decided it was too much work? Definitely not. Could not go with Katie on the train as he was late getting back from work? No. B is the answer here. It's the only one that's plausible, actually. So Mr. Perkins, John Perkins, changed his feelings from 1 minute to the next, just like a pendulum on a clock going tick tock, tick tock. Okay, that's the idea that the writer's going for here, that his Mr. Perkins' feelings can just like automatically click from one side to the next like a pendulum in a clock. Okay. 19. Which quotation from the passage supports the idea that John was strongly affected by the absence of Katie? As he walked, John Perkins prophesied to himself with gloomy and downtrodden cynicism the foregone conclusions of the monotonous day. Well, at this point, Katie was still there. And this quote is from the start of the story when she had not left yet, so it can't be A. After dinner, Katie would show him the new patch in her crazy quilt that the Iceman had cut off for her off the end of his foreign hand. Again, this is nothing about the absence of Katie, so it can't be B. Everything in the room spoke of a loss, of an essence gone, of its soul and life departed. So it must be C. That's directly, the quotation C is directly about Katie being absent or not being there. Everything in the room spoke of a loss. Okay, an essence gone, that essence being Katie. D, it was 8:15, the time he left each night to hang out with the guys. That's not about the absence of Katie. So the answer is C. Moving on. In the flow chart, note the order which the events happened in the excerpt. Okay. So in the real test, this is a drag and drop question. So you just move the boxes with your mouse and drop them into the correct place. So what happened first? Okay, so this is from the scene when John gets back and Katie has gone. So it must be John starts to tidy up, then John starts to tidy up, I think. Then John reads Katie's note, I believe. Then John sees the newspaper with a hole in it. Then John tells Katie he is going out. Okay, so it's John starts to tidy up first. Then John reads Katie's note because he finds that when he's tidying up. And then he sees the newspaper with a hole in it from which she has taken the timetable, the train timetable. And then John tells Katie he's going out once she comes back. Okay, and the final question, why was John walking so slowly to his home? A, he was not feeling well. No. He was tired after working hard. No. Maybe that's the case, but it's not relevant here. He knew his wife was not at home. No, can't be that. He knew what the evening would be like. So it's D. He knew what the evening would be like. So as we said before, he feels like his routine is monotonous and boring. He's not enjoying married life and all of the predictability that brings. So yeah, it is D. He knew what the evening would be like. Okay, the same as every other. Okay, so that's it. That's another little set of fiction questions for you. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm Teacher Mike from Phuket PALS. See you in the next video. Take it easy. Bye-bye.